Shalom, shalom, everyone. It's Sunday, May the 2nd, 2021. It's the Wave Sheaf Offering Day. It's the day after the regular Sabbath. Happy birthday, Mom. I took some videos and acquired these pics from it. I just wanted Israel to see that it's not hard to keep the commandments. I'm a trucker and I'm on the road 6 days a week. I don't even have a place to call home, but still I keep the feast, and I'm in love with my Creator who calls me to do so. So here is the meal offering, the sheaf here in the middle. That's the best I can come up with. I don't have a wheat field to go and pick the sheaf from, which is the wheat while it's in the boot or in the ear. But I bought some wheat flour and made this unleavened bread because I'm in the middle of unleavened bread. And then I have a drink offering here. That is the grape juice. And then the olive oil and the frankincense over here in that little jar, and the salt. All those are required. And then I brought a basket of my Wave Sheaf offerings. These the 10 Commandments in the Hebrew, and the cards, or let's see, how do I? There's the fire. Okay, so here's my basket, and these are actually my Wave Sheaf offerings. These are the first of my first fruits. I've been seeding into Teshuvah Ministries, and they've been giving me these cards for witnessing, and so I'm waving them before Yahweh so that they will produce a fruit. And they went all out, made some really nice cards that I can pass out, several kinds. And so since this day is a special day, we're called to make the offering with our Wave Sheaf, and the wine and the oil and the frankincense. All that, you can find it in, I think it's the book of Leviticus or the book of Numbers. And I did that. It's not hard. It didn't take long. I bought this little Weber pit for $30, and I got the wood and the coal and started me a fire. And I'm not in any special place. I'm just here in a truck stop. I think if I were to try to do it out in the open between the trucks, people would object. But I pulled off to the edge, found a place where there was a little grass and not dry, and there's actually water around me. And I made this offering, and I enjoyed it. It took a couple of hours. I took pics. I actually made a video. This isn't it. This is the 2 weeks after. I'm in the count of the Omar down to the 50, and this is 2 weeks later. I've been building up the text for this video. The first video that I made on this day, I was really psyched up. I was happy. I was moving fast. I had a lot to do in my hours off of work. And since it's the first day of work, it's not declared to be a high Sabbath. So I was able to work. I had the work to do. I've been homeless and poor before, and I know that there are people that need the money, and so I do work what I can because I want seed to give into the kingdom. That's what this day is all about, dedicating that seed. And so let's go back to the text. And where's it going? Okay, there we go. Okay. So I guess the video takes a little bit of power from the tablet. So I just want to say this. Upon first inspection, it would appear as though Leviticus 23 is the first mention of the sheaf wave dedication. If this were true, that would likely make it Levitical priesthood issue. However, the connection here is the tithe, which is from Abraham's day, even older than that. For this dedication of waving the offering of dedication is in fact initiated by Abraham of his own free will. That's important. But before we go there, I would like to comment. This is important too, here in Leviticus has laid out. It's a way of living the Creator has designed for us. We are to be good stewards over his creation, just like when he made it for Adam and Eve. He gave us the land then. He's bringing us into the promised land here in Leviticus 23. And he's telling them how to live on that land with the plants and the animals, dedicating each new beginning to him before we eat of it or use any. And we were to be living peaceable lives in abundance because of his blessings are upon us through these dedications. So we dedicate to him, and then he makes it grow. He makes the harvest. And in that harvest, we offer back to him as our heart's desire. However, in Leviticus, they were under obligatory, according to the word, the book of the law, they were obliged to give in this way. But which I'm fixing to get into here, I want to show you something. According to the scripture, Abraham was not commanded to give 10%, and neither are we. Abraham gave thank offerings from his free will. 10%, that's the Hebrew word tithe, under scrutiny of those who had been plundered. Scripture shows Abraham's heart was to give all the plunder up, not just 10%. And he didn't keep any of it. And you can see that here in Genesis 14, 22 through 23. And Abraham said to the king of Sodom, I lift up my hand unto Yahweh, the Most High. That would be El Shaddai, I believe. I didn't look that up. Anyway, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will not take a thread, even to a shoe latch, and that I will not take anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abraham rich, or Abram rich. And there it is, the first wave offering. I don't know if you see it there. He says, I lift up my hand right here. And obviously that was a prayer in a time of crisis, the fruit of his lips from the bread of affliction for Lot. In other words, he suffered when he heard Lot was taken away. So he was captured, and he was going to be enslaved with all of his things. And so he even had the forethought to pray for his neighbors. So all of that you can see in Genesis 14, where he's telling the king of Sodom, look, this isn't mine, this is yours. But he did offer up 10%. And I imagine that was pretty hard for Sodom to sit still for, because that wasn't his way. But he sat still for it. And so Abraham was very bold. To me, Abraham was very bold to do that with somebody else's stolen stuff that he won back. So, but he was righteous, and he didn't keep any of it. Abraham understood the dedications and thank offerings, even in a crisis of war, yet he also understood that plundering of others was not the way to prosper. So now let us consider Leviticus 23, verse 14. It says we're not to eat the fruit until we've waved the sheaf. However, if we dedicate barley crop and then 50 days later eat from the wheat crop, then we're in direct disobedience of Leviticus 23:14. So this is the way of Israel today, is they hunt for the barley at the start of the year, and they dedicate it. But then 50 days later, they go and eat from the wheat crop. Now, let's read this in verse 14. And you shall eat neither bread, nor parched corn, nor green ears, until the selfsame day you have brought an offering unto Elohim. So that's a dedication offering to sanctify the field, that everything in that field would then be a blessing to us. And so that's one thing that should open the eyes of people right there. But I'm going to prove this in another way. You'll just keep reading this. I'll just keep reading this to you and try to explain it. So let me put it to you like this in a parable. There was a king who had cupbearers. When a drink like wine came to the king's palace, he was to drink a pint, wait 4 hours, and then bring a cup full to the king. One day, both red wine and pomegranate juice arrived together from the same person. So the cupbearer drank a pint of the red wine and waited 4 hours. However, he knew it was the king's pleasure to give to his queen the pomegranate juice. So he was excited, and the cupbearer brought a cup of the pomegranate juice to the king. The king was delighted to give the pomegranate juice to his queen, and he did so. However, the queen grew sick and died immediately. So what do you suppose the king did with the cupbearer? Obviously, the cupbearer didn't drink any of it. He would have died too. And on inspection, I'm sure the king found that out. But what do you think he did to that cupbearer? That parable is to show that the obvious lack of obedience in the cupbearer, because he didn't drink the pomegranate juice and wait 4 hours and then bring the cup to the king. Okay, I don't know why I need to say that. I shouldn't really need to say that. I think that's obvious. Okay, so I just want to show you something. Oh, I had this all laid out in a different format, and then I turned this tablet sideways. Okay, so here's the covenant and offerings. We're going to go over Adam, Abraham, Israel, Moses. I wish I would stop doing that. Then the Messiah. Okay, because these are all important. They all gave first fruits, or the first of the first fruits. I would like to distinguish right now that the first fruits are the particular crop when they're harvested, at time of harvest. However, the first of the first fruits is the dedication, way before when the harvest first starts. Okay, that's the dedication. It's an offering of dedication. So it's not just about the plants and the animals. It's about everything that comes into our lives. Everything we do, we should be doing this way. And if we just look at this for a minute, I think you'll be able to see that the way the Father has shown it to me over many years of being shown this. He has shown this to me, and from a long time back. I think he first started showing me this, well, definitely for sure by 2005 he was showing me this. But I've been pondering over this for years and years and years, and I see it as a way of life that I've been keeping, and I hope that you can see the relevance of this, and I hope you can also see the true new sheaf, that is wave offering of the Omer. Okay, so Adam, he had the rights of the firstborn, and his offerings were free will. And of course he fell, but it seems obvious that he was teaching Abel and Cain the process of first fruits, because it's actually spoken that he gave first fruits willingly, that Abel did. Cain, it doesn't say Cain gave first fruits. It says he gave of his crops, but it doesn't say it was first fruits. I think that's why the Creator turned him down, and why he got so mad and he killed his brother eventually. But Abraham Abraham was loved so much that the Father made a covenant with him in Genesis 12, and through faith, he waived dedications and offered up tithes willingly, and he offered up Isaac, believing Yah had the power to raise him to life. And I didn't know here, but he also offered up tithes to Melchizedek, and that's because that covenant then was of the order of Melchizedek. So in Genesis 15, Israel is answered for the covenant of promises. In other words, in Genesis 15, the Father gave Abraham a covenant of promise for his children. His children are called Israel. That's third generation down, that had all those 12 tribes, which are all together called Israel. And they are to be a nation of priests according to the answer to the covenant promise of Genesis 15. We read in Exodus 19:24 that they were to be a nation of priests. And Exodus 19:24 is the covenant that was made. And the laws is what, our wedding vows are spoken there, how we're to keep them. It's just the very first part of chapter 24, Exodus chapter 24 is where it ends. And then from there, they broke the covenant, and he's up talking to Moses while they're down breaking the covenant with what he just said for them not to do, that is, make a golden calf to worship. And he's up there talking to Moses, trying to cut out the words onto the stone, and they're making the golden calf. Their hearts weren't in it. And so the commandments were broken, and they came back and cut another covenant. This is a different covenant, though. It was the covenant of the book of the law. And they were to be a nation with priests now. And they gave not willingly, but obligatory, by commandment. They were to give because their hearts weren't in it. He had to command them to do it. But he wanted us to have a willing heart. And so he eventually renewed the covenant of promise in the Messiah. And once again, in this, we find in the scriptures that we become a nation of priests. This is the Melchizedek covenant renewed. Okay? So the scripture says that the book of the law was nailed to the stake. In other words, it was abolished, and Yeshua abolished it because he is the Passover lamb. Yeshua is our Passover, and he is our righteousness. He is our peace. He is the reason why the Ruach HaKodesh got sent down to us. But anyway, I want to go on and trying to explain this in a logical format here. So John chapter 12, 24 and verses 24 through 28, Yeshua compared himself to a grain of wheat. Okay, so to me that's pretty critical when you look at that. He's comparing laying down his life as a grain of wheat. And then also, Yeshua waived the sheaf of his body and blood offering to come. If we read Matthew 26 through 28, we see that he waived the bread and said of it, when he waived it, that this is my body, which is given up for men, for the forgiveness of sin. And then he took the cup of the wine, and he said, this is my blood. He waved it before the Father. This is the wave offering, but it's not a 50-day wave offering, because it's just a day away from him actually doing this. But he was dedicating the purpose of giving himself up to the Father here. This is the way of life. This is the way the Father wants us to do everything. If we think about going to another city, we're to dedicate it to him and then go. Don't just go to the city and expect that he's going to bless us. It actually talks about that in the scriptures. And then, if we want to buy a piece of land, we should dedicate it to him. and then do it, so that his blessing is upon us as we walk out the buying and the choosing and buying and all of that. So in verse, here this is, I want to show you the same wave offering and then fulfillment of that crop here again. Yeshua waves his resurrection and dedication on the day of the wheat sheaf omer, the day, the very day of the year that national Israel comes together and does this wheat sheaf wave offering. At least that's what they're commanded to do. He raises to life, and he's waving his life, his resurrection, to the Father, because he is the first fruits. And the scripture is very clear on this. He wasn't alone. He brought forth 144,000 of souls that were innocent with him in his wave offering. But that was just a small token, because he wanted the whole crop to follow. And so he was careful. In Acts chapter 2, we see that crop, the beginning of that crop, the harvest. We see it's received on Shavuot. So he fulfills, in his death, he fulfills Passover. In his resurrection, he fulfills the Nuf Omer, the wave offering. He fulfills it in such a degree that it's almost not even comparable about this daily walk thing, except that our daily walk is exactly why he came, to write that word in our heart so that we live it out, not just sayers of the word, but doers of the word. Okay? And so Acts chapter 2 is awesome, where it shows that he was received on that day. It's interesting that day that they poured out the Spirit on the crop of Yeshua, on his disciples, was the only day of the year that you were to bring an offering to the Father with leaven in it. It's commanded, carte blanche, never bring the Father an offering with leaven. But they made an exception on the day of Shavuot, that the bread was to have leaven in it, and that it would be received of the Father. And so Yeshua showed up on Yahweh's doorstep on that day, and Yahweh accepted him on that day. And the Messiah said when he's going up, I'm going to the Father, and when I'm received of him, I will ask him to send you the Spirit. And that's exactly what happened. And it's awesome that we see that on his resurrection, the day of waving the Omer, he fulfills it, and then in Shavuot, in Acts chapter 2, he also fulfills this. So it's his death, resurrection, and his waving the bread. That's a dedication. He dedicated himself, and then a day later, he lays down his life. It's Passover. He lays down his life for us. And the scripture says no one takes his life from him. He lays it down willingly. So that was a willing offering. That's the way we are to offer in light of that we are a Melchizedek priest through Yeshua, because he is our high priest of the order of Melchizedek. So to me, this is all real important. And these are all the scriptures that back up where I'm coming from with this. Deuteronomy 18, 1 through 24, the first fruit of the corn, of the wine, of your oil, the first of the fleece of your sheep. All of these are first fruits, or crops that we need to both give the first of the first fruits, a dedication, and then at the first part of the harvest, we're to bring an offering. That's what the Shavuot, that's what the Omer and the Shavuot are about. That's the way of life that he prescribed, whether it's for animals, if we're, shepherds and we're raising up critters, that's what we were to do. If we're farmers and we're raising wheat, that's what we were to do. If we're working the land with and our crops or beans or whatever, we are to do it in like manner. We give dedication at the first sign of a harvest, and then when we start harvesting, we bring offerings of thankfulness for the harvest because we can put the seed in the ground, but he's the one that makes it grow, and he's the one that makes it put out abundance. Because when he created this creation, he created everything in a multiplying fashion. No one else can do that. I mean, no one else has done that. He's awesome. And so these are all just scriptures of that we are to confirm to you that we are to do this for everything that comes into our lives. Here in 2 Chronicles 31, we see first fruits of corn, wine, oil, honey, and all the increase of the field, tithe of oxen and sheep, and tithe of holy things. So everything, he wants everything into our lives to be consecrated this way. This is so important. Nehemiah 10, first fruits of our dough, first fruits of all manner of trees, walnuts, something that we can prosper on. Almonds. There's all kinds of things here. Oil from olives and all kinds of seeds of plants. And then the tithes of our ground. So here I'm just showing you all the different places, so that you can see the evidence supporting what I'm trying to explain to you today is all through the scriptures. For the first fruits of our tithes. Here in Nehemiah 12, that is just awesome. They all participated in doing this, and y'all were made such a blessing of abundance in their lives. It was just, they were happy. It wasn't just the first month, it was the second month. It wasn't just the first week, it was the second week. Well, they were received in doing all that because it's not just about doing it that one time, 3 times a year. Those are the times we get together nationally to do such things. But even when we're not getting together nationally, coming together in communion like that, we are still to walk in that way with everything that comes into our lives. Here it is, Proverbs chapter 3, the first fruits of all your increase. So this isn't talking about 10% here. People use that so much. Abraham did the 10% thing, and he's the initiator of it, so they just always call it the tithe. But if you look at the detail of it, it's not talking about 10%. It's talking about he wants it from your heart. Whatever amount is in your heart is what he wants. Here it is in Ezekiel. The first fruits of all, the first fruits of all things. Now that nails it, right there. The first of all first fruits. Okay, so that's the dedication. The first fruits is the part of the thank offerings. So you have the dedication and the thank offerings. And they're not always 50 days apart. Look, I want to show you something about the wheat. The wheat is 50 days. It's actually from the time it's in the boot till the time it's ready to start harvesting at the very start of its harvest. It's 50 days. Let me go back. Okay, right here. So, I don't know if you can see this, but right here in the boot is day 45. Okay? And then when it's first ripened, if you look out here, it's first ripened at day 75. So, and it's all ripened much later, but we can see from in the boot would be 95 days later. It should basically most all of it be is ready to be harvested. So that's why it's a 50-day countdown. It's because that's how many days needed for the wheat. And if you've ever done that, if you've ever grown the wheat, and I did that for 3 years because I wanted to see, the Father told me to do it, and I wanted to see, and I gained all kinds of insights. I could see that it was always ready if I obeyed him according to Exodus 12:2, where the first of the year was after the sun's circuit, and then you look for the first new moon. That wheat harvest was always going to be in the boot. Some part of your field is always going to be in the boot. And then 50 days later, there it is, all ready to start harvesting. So I hope that this all kind of sinks in to what I'm talking about here. Now, I want to share with you in the Messiah, this here in Romans 11. This is so awesome. For if the first fruit be holy, the lump also is holy. And if the root be holy, so also are the branches. Okay, there it is in a nutshell. It's explaining what this first fruit wave offering of dedication and the Shavuot 50 days later is all about. It's about having the whole thing be holy, is sanctified into our lives. Okay? So it's not just with the plants and the animals. It's with everything we go to do. We want to start a new job, dedicate it to the Father. I did this with my wife of faith years and years and years ago. I already, as a new babe, I understood the process. The Father showed me about dedication. We were to dedicate things to Him. Whether or not we go to a city, He showed me way back. This was back in the, about 1991, within my first year as a new babe in the Messiah. He showed me that I dedicate to Him, whether I'm moving to another city, whether I'm just traveling to another city, dedicate that plan to Him, then my plan will succeed. And boy, howdy, I'm telling you, there were a lot of good things that came about for me doing that all the time, even still. Even with this job that I have, this is what I did. When I began looking for this job, I dedicated that process to Him. And He gave me choices, and I gave Him, dedicated those choices to Him. I made a move. I chose this particular line of work with this particular company. And then when the fruit of that came, I gave Him offerings of it. That was just awesome that He made it work out so much for my good. And He brought me counsel along the way that I wouldn't have thought to have been counsel, but I heard a little voice say, ask Him. And so I did, and I received wonderful counsel. It led me to this particular company. And it's been really nice, a nice set of people working with them. So, let's see, was there anything else I wrote to read to you? Okay, so I suppose I would be doing an injustice if I didn't bring up Cain and Abel. I think I did mention that. It should be pointed out that Abel offered the firstlings of the fat of the best of them, the first fruits. This is Scripture actually talks about it in this way. But Cain, he wasn't spoken of that way. So it just says he brought him from his crops. It didn't say he brought him the first. It didn't say he's dedicating it. He may have, who knows what he may have done wrong, but my guess is he ate from it. He used it for other things. I don't, we're told not to do that. So that may have been what the Father didn't like about it. And Genesis 4 verse 3, that's where it talks about that with Cain and Abel. Anyway, I hope you can see that this process of dedications and offerings, or dedication offering, and then the thank offerings that follow when the harvest comes from your dedications, isn't hard. It's the way of life that the Father has for us to do, and I, for one, enjoy it. And I hope that this helps you to step forward and enjoy keeping the feast. It doesn't have to be real complicated. You don't have to go rent a room somewhere in a what do they call those places? Anyway, those rooms at the first floor on the hotel that they'll rent out to you. It doesn't have to be anything like that. If you don't have anyone to keep it with at all, just you and the Father. I had so many wonderful whispers of his Spirit into my mind and into my heart of the meaning of his word when it's just me and him. And I'm just being obedient and the best I know how to do. And he receives me of that. And it's just, it's, that time with him is just awesome. It's true, I may be a little lonely, but his Rhema and his company is so much to me, and he is my heart's desire. And he sees that and he responds, and I love it. I hope you find that you can love it too. Shalom, shalom.